no one expects you to care about the answer. But if you ask a follow-up question, then people kind of go, oh, they do care.
Alan and I have always been curious about other people, hence why we do this podcast, right? We always like to know the stories about what leads people to their careers. Emma Jenkins is a workplace mediator. Her entire career is about understanding and being curious too. So when we met a fellow curious person, we couldn't wait to have a conversation. This episode's epic. We hope you enjoy it. Make sure you go and check out all of our links below. Give her a bit of love, and we will see you on the other side. Emma, thank you very much for joining us today on the Digital Circus Life. We're very glad to have you here. And as we start every single episode, we start with one very important question, and that is, what is it that you are trying to achieve, either personally or professionally?
I love the idea of having a positive impact, which, I'm sure a lot of people have the same kind of idea. For me, I think through helping people have peaceful relationships. Particularly the more I do this, the more I see the impact of not having peaceful relationships. So I would love for the different things that I do to have that kind of impact on people.
Where does that stem from?
Yeah, I know. Let's get straight to it. Like you literally deal with people having arguments, right?
Yeah.
Professionally and personally.
I think you should move into our house.
Yeah. No, we don't argue that much. So where does the desire to
put yourself into that negative space?
Because it's different, right? I get the kind of what you want, right? That's fine. Yeah. But this is a very particular way of kind of trying to influence that, help that, get that. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, I don't know why particularly, but I've always been fascinated by relationships. Or you could call it nosy. You could call it savior complex, like we could go there. I think when you feel like I can see something that they can't about this situation, then to feel like in this position I have been given permission by them to say, well, I don't tell them what to do, but I can have enough impact on them through the process so that they end up figuring out, okay, this may not be what I thought it was originally, or my perspective on here needs to shift a little. Those assumptions actually aren't true, that kind of thing. So I think I've always been able to see something else that's going on that perhaps they haven't seen, which it generally happens when you're outside of the situation anyway. But I guess I was just particularly interested and quite nosy about people's relationships.
I love nosiness.
But I still think I think this is too much of it. I'm sorry, Emma. This is too much of an abridged overview, right? There's too many little steps involved.
Don't go all Stephen Bartlett. But why?
We were watching a side story this morning. We were watching Stephen Bartlett with the hardest geezer, Russ Cook, the guy who's just run the length of Africa. And we only watched the first kind of 35 minutes because it's 2 hours long. No, our podcast is not 2 hours long, everybody. He spent 35 minutes basically prying him, trying to get him to say something like, my childhood was so tough, or words to that effect. And he had what he said, this guy, a normal childhood, but his dad worked and and he didn't know. Anyway, the point is, I am curious, right? Yeah. I'm genuinely curious. You're seemingly curious about why you do what you do. But there's still those steps between savior complex, curiosity, whatever you want to call it. It doesn't really matter what you want to call it. Yeah. To actively going, I'm going to go. Have we actually said what you do for a living? Have we just glossed over that in this trying to get to the why?
I don't know.
What do you do, Emma? Tell us all.
To sum it up fully, I guess you'd say I'm like a conflict resolution specialist. But
that's
to
a
be
great
a bit more
title.
Specific, to be a bit more specific, then I particularly focus on workplace mediation, so sorting out disputes between colleagues, and then conflict coaching. So conflict coaching is kind of like an abridged version. I talk about assertiveness and peaceful leadership skills and that kind of thing. But anything really that's to do with effective communication and knowing how to prevent unnecessary conflict, manage conflict when it happens, and then resolve it.
Right. So I think there's a gazillion business owners. Just for the record, there's only about 5.5 million businesses in the UK, right? So when I say gazillion, it's an exaggeration. There's a gazillion business owners who have woken up and once upon a time and gone, I want to do a business. Now, there's a lot of noise around do what you're passionate about and all the rest of it. But fundamentally, I think a lot of people in business kind of go, oh, I'm going to be a painter, a decorator, a sparky, a VA, a digital marketeer, you know, or something. I just want to be in business. Yours is so specific.
Okay, so what led me to that? Using this. Okay, so I mean, I've wanted to be so many different things over my life, like interior designer, which absolutely not now.
I don't know. Your background's very, very lovely. You'd be very good at that.
Yeah.
Everyone on YouTube and Spotify will currently be enjoying that.
I wanted to, I don't know, do all sorts of things. Acting was one that I really was keen on for a very, very long period of time. I was drama prefect at school, and I was in all the plays, and I did loads of like the external exams and stuff like that. And I did A-level drama, loved all of that. My dad said, "You're very good at arguing, Emma. Is it worth you looking into law?" And actually, when he mentioned that, the more I thought about it, the more I thought, actually, yeah, I probably would like that. I love debating and I love like critical thinking and that kind of thing. And so I did a law degree, absolutely loved it, particularly the topics where you got to debate. And I got to the end of it and I realised I didn't want to be a solicitor or a barrister. So I'd done my dissertation on family mediation, because I was quite intrigued by the whole mediation idea, not taking one side, but looking at both sides. I ended up working at the Employment Tribunal for a few years. And so alongside finding out about mediation during my degree, albeit in the family law arena, then doing employment law in my degree, but also then even more so at the Employment Tribunal, you get to kind of see the worst case scenario if people don't resolve things early. And it then became more of this thing of, well, what if I could do this? Oh, also, as a side note, I was one of the customer service officers at the tribunal for a bit, which basically means you deal with complaints and a few other bits, but complaints are the main thing. And I really enjoyed dealing with complaints, and I don't know why.
She's such a strange and lovely human.
There can't be many people who actually enjoy that.
No, but I think it's because I spotted a few times, like, I know how to make you feel better. And so to start off and then be quite angry and annoyed, and then for them to leave and feel kind of quite pacified about the whole thing and listened to, I thought, well, maybe I could do this mediation thing. So yeah, I went and got trained 8 years ago.
And we're coming back to all of this, and you kind of said drama, bit of debating, law. That path makes sense, and I think it was Laurie's episode talked about everyone should embrace drama because of the confidence and the skills that come from it. Just conversationally, I got an A in GCSE drama.
It's the only A he got.
It is my only A. One A, one B, two C's, 5 D's. I still remember them all. But yeah, I know I loved it. I still love being a bit dramatic. Is that a surprise, Emily? No.
Do you still do any kind of drama in your life now?
No, although interestingly, I've got a 13-year-old and she is obsessed with everything drama too. And it's not something that I even kind of pushed her into and encouraged her into, but she just kind of started doing drama at secondary school and fell in love. Yeah. So it's quite nice to see that kind of in her. Do I do any kind of drama? No. I can be quite silly sometimes, and I think doing drama means that you can do that. And I've done a lot of stuff with like children's work over the years, and it's, I think when you do drama, you feel very free to just do anything that entertains people. So I think it still comes out in that way. But no, I haven't done any like amateur dramatics or anything like that since.
But I still think that I translated what you said right then into being a bit silly every now and then and things like that. And I think that has its place in a serious role, you know, because if you went into a serious role just being serious, not only could it, I know that sounds absurd because sometimes you have to be serious, but not only could it potentially end up in a place it doesn't need to be end up in, but also you taking it home might be harder.
That's going to be my next
you
question.
know, if you're because actually let's go to that, because you've got to take this home with you after every time. Are you able to kind of
compartmentalize it?
Yes, I can, but I have to do my things to do that. So like there's a lot of encouragement for mediators to do reflective practice, which is basically you look back at what happened during the session, things that went well, things that you could improve on, anything to kind of take away from it. I'm a mentor for mediators as well, with 2 other amazing mediators. And we offer like debriefing services for people, because I've experienced sometimes having a case that's particularly difficult, because when you're doing workplace mediation, you're often there on like it's a really tough day for them. I'm not going to go dramatic and say it's like their worst day, but it's not a great day for them to get to that point. And so you're normally entering after they've had a few months of like not sleeping very well, of perhaps bringing their situation home and having then an impact on their relationships at home. And so sometimes you're also hearing quite tough stuff around mental health concerns, even to, you know, the extreme mental health concerns that they might share with you. And, you know, my first situation where that was really significantly part of this person's story, I found it very difficult to compartmentalize after that and detach from that. And so I did a debriefing session with a mediator that I know who's really good at dealing with mental health in a mediation. So that was really significant for me, doing that, because now I really take my reflective practice seriously. I think it's one of those things as well, like when you really are passionate about what you do, then I have to be quite boundaried about where my responsibilities start and stop. Like, you know, I really want people to come to the end of a mediation and feel great and feel happy and really get on, and it's all like butterflies and rainbows afterwards. But my pragmatic brain knows that for a lot of situations it's going to take a really long time to rebuild trust, and they've got to do the bits afterwards. Mediation is more of a reset button than a conclusion. So it's a conclusion to what's happened, but it's not a conclusion to them feeling a little bit unsure about the other person. So I have to be quite conscious of, am I over-functioning in my role by thinking that I can then control what happens after we leave the mediation.
So I'm going to do something that Emily normally punches me in the leg under the table for.
Stay tuned.
Yeah, I'm still kind of keen to where this all comes from, you know. So I think most kind of, I'm going to say average, which we all know average doesn't exist, right? But the most average kids would not be massively into conflict and wanting to solve problems and enjoying the debate and everything else. Did that come from anywhere? You know,
I mean, I think my parents were really good at encouraging us to like ask questions. And so my dad's a minister. He's an ordained minister. So, you know, there's a stereotype of, you know, being a minister's child, that you just kind of absorb everything and are brainwashed by your parents. They absolutely did not want that for us. So they really encouraged us to debate things. I'm a middle child. There's a lot of psychology around being a middle child and then being like the natural mediator. Although, you know, my siblings, we all have a pretty good relationship, very good relationship.
My sister, the middle child, is the mediator.
Yeah,
absolute fact.
Yeah. So I think you kind of naturally grow up being in the middle and seeing both sides. And I don't know. I guess there's probably quite a lot of things. I think being fascinated by people has just, sorry, can you hear my dog scratching his collar
Yes.
and
It's
jiggling?
fine.
Yes.
It's fine.
Hi.
It's real life. Real life.
But yeah, I think just, a combination of things, fascination with people, being encouraged to ask questions my whole life, and then feeling like I could just see what was going wrong, you know?
Are you able to apply that to your personal life in
I
terms of
think
being able to
having
see?
two children, I think having two children has, being a mediator is good for having two children, and having two children is good for being a mediator, because they both inform the skill set you need for each role. Thankfully, my girls get on well. They do get on really well, but I think, if I hadn't been trained as a mediator, I think I probably would try and control the situation more, rather than kind of try and coach them through the situation, if you know what I mean.
Oh, we bear in that. Us fight so much. I think we need to factor in, rather than going, can you just shut up?
Yes.
We might have to, because it's like happened for the trizillionth time in a row. There's only so many times you go, okay, let's help you through this.
But in terms with your partner,
we obviously
though,
don't say shut up, Dad, if you're listening. We say be quiet.
Are you ever able to just? We bicker. I mean, we don't argue a lot. Yes, we do.
Yeah.
We don't argue a lot.
Don't.
But we bicker. We're just bickering now, darling. Emma, step in.
It's passion. It's fine.
But in terms of when you're having relationship bickers and squabbles, can you just be a normal couple and do that, or do you go, no, stop, let's think about it? And are you able to diffuse it quite quickly?
So I'm not very good at letting issues lie.
Okay.
So I say that's something that I probably bring from it, because I want to always resolve everything nice and neatly. I'm not very good at just like, and now we'll just move on and calmly, like, I find that very difficult. So because I just want to feel like everything's had a nice, neat resolution. I think it has helped me look at things differently and try not to take things personally. Particularly, I think, so I'm a DISC practitioner as well, which is all about, communication styles and behavioral traits and that kind of thing. And I think, and also I read up on like the 5 love languages. And so a lot of that kind of stuff has helped me understand where my thought process is different to my husband's, and where I would perhaps take a stance where I would get defensive or feel like, so one of the DISC styles is like D, and they are often like really action takers. They often are in a leadership position because they don't back off from saying, yeah, I'll do it. And they also, when they get passionate, they often get loud. And I remember for years, like, saying to my husband, like, why are you angry? Because if he got loud, then in my head, I go, loud equals angry. I'm like, why are you getting? And then, of course, he would get frustrated because he's like, I'm not angry, but I'm getting angry because the more you're telling me how I'm feeling and I don't feel that way,
you get angry.
I'm getting angry.
Don't try and wash this over as passion.
Yeah. And then I read up on, like, the communication styles, and he's definitely got a mix of D and C. And when I was reading this book, and it's called Surrounded by Idiots, it's a great book on communication styles. And I literally looked up when we were reading, and I went, oh, so when you get loud, you're not always angry. And he's like, no, thank you, no. So there's little light bulb moments that I do, not thinking that this is going to impact my marriage, but actually it definitely informs a lot of that kind of stuff, so that I can take a step back a bit.
There is that classic. We will get onto businessy stuff eventually. There is that classic. I'll never forget. My mum said this. Bless her. She doesn't listen or watch, so I can say all this stuff. It's like you always put this effort into like your job, your sports, your hobbies, but you don't always remember to put the same amount of effort into your relationship. So you meet someone and you go, oh, we're in a relationship now, and it's like out of everything you do in your life, it's probably something that's going to take up the most time. Your relationship was, or 50 years potentially. If you think about some of our grandparents who got together when they were young. So it is kind of worth that bit of effort, isn't it?
Yeah, and it impacts everything as well. I mean, you guys work together, so it definitely would impact that. But even people who don't work with each other, when they're having a difficult time with their relationship, then it's going to be very difficult for them to not think about that while they're doing other things.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
absolutely. We are one of those weird beasts who work together and live together and parent together and do all that together. That's not a common thing.
No, it's not, and it is okay. I wouldn't say it comes. It's not. Oh wow! Look, I'd say I just joked on LinkedIn that this would become a mediation session, right? And we took it there without even trying. We'd gloss over that.
Okay.
No, it's brilliant. It's brilliant, but I do think there has been impact at times, especially with a young family as well.
Yeah.
That we wouldn't have planned for in all of this.
But I think so. One of my favorite quotes about mediation is basically that all conflict, the root of all conflict, is around unmet, or the actual quote is violated expectations. And I think when you get into a relationship, your expectations of the other tend to revolve around how do we do living together. Then when you have children, how do we do parenting together? If you work together, then there's these other expectations you will have of how do you work with me, and what do you bring to the table in this work scenario as well. And so yeah, I can imagine that you would have had to figure out what are realistic expectations of each other in these different zones that we interact in.
Very true.
So when you work with your clients,
I like the fact you're glossing over the couple us part. We keep going, Emily.
I'm not. I'm just very aware that we have limited time, and I want to get to all the things.
And we have another burning, not an end question, but I have a burning question.
You're full of the questions today, darling.
Well, I'm interested.
Emily, you lead this one. Alan doesn't stop talking.
No, lead only means the beginning and the end. You know that.
So when you're working with your clients, do you come in at the point of conflict, or are you brought in earlier than that to avoid that point of conflict?
It tends to vary. With mediation, generally something has happened. So I would love for me to be brought in before a grievance has been, the process has gone through, because generally sometimes grievances are absolutely necessary. So I'm not anti-grievance in totality, but I think they are often used and unfortunately, they dig into the behaviours that an organisation finds unacceptable rather than resolving issues. And so what ends up happening is that period of time is really stressful for both parties. Then they come to me. So they've got the conflict that started the grievance in the first place, and then also this internal conflict of having gone through this quite, not very nice process. No one enjoys it. So, yes, most of the time for a mediation, it's not because they're trying to prevent something. It's because something has happened. People are starting to feel uncomfortable. So it may not be a big blow up, but just that the organisation is going, okay, these people need to figure out what's happening here because other people are noticing and it's not great. Stuff like coaching and training, that's often a preventative measure that they can put in place. So if I do a bit of training on team communication, with the DISC stuff, then that can be a really nice way of understanding why we communicate differently and how things could happen before it leads to complete meltdowns between people. But generally, people get involved later on. Yeah. But I would love for more to happen earlier.
Yeah, I can imagine. I guess, yes, that'd be better for everyone involved, wouldn't it? Rather than sort of waiting.
Utopia.
Yeah.
Time does not heal all wounds in conflict. It does not.
Oh, I like that. Remember, write that one down.
That's your headline.
That's my cover, right. 25-ish minutes. Right. So, Emma, but the bit is, so I get all this. I get kind of now I'm starting to understand where it comes from, critical thinking, which is so important. But why make a business out of it?
Why not?
No, okay. You can't say why not. The whole point of our podcast is trying to work out why people started their businesses. So you can't say why not.
Yeah. So I don't talk about it a lot, but I've got 2 children, as I've mentioned. One of them is a wheelchair user. So when she was born, suddenly I went, okay, I will struggle to have a full-time job working for an organisation even with great flexible working and compassionate organizations, personally, I know that the way that I am built is that I want to be a really good teammate. And so I would struggle to take time. I mean, even during like pregnancy, having to go to the midwife, I'd feel so guilty, like going to, so I knew that for myself, I would find it difficult to take time away from the workplace. And she needed lots of appointments at the beginning, not as many now, but I knew that I needed to figure out how to do life without feeling guilty about managing home and work. And so I always knew I wanted to get into mediation. It being my own business was a lot driven by most mediators are independent anyway. Unless you're an internal mediator for an organization, but you tend not to be hired as an internal mediator. You tend to get into a job, then be trained. So the natural course for a mediator is to run their own business. Right. But also particularly for my family situation, then it made so much sense to be totally in control of my diary.
Yeah. And again, so why not, Emily, was really a null and void kind of mute point.
I get that, though. We've discussed this off camera before as well, and it's as you know, we have a daughter with additional needs as well, and the idea of being employed, knowing how often our phone rings to go, actually, could you come and pick her up, or could you do this, or something's happened, and it's that I get that feeling of feeling guilty to not be able to be 150% of doing the thing you love for someone else, when actually we couldn't be there if we were in an employed role. We simply just couldn't have that level of communication we have with the school and the doctors and all that kind of stuff, doing it in that other way. So I completely understand that being a priority. You're completely 100% I get that. How do you now this? How long have you been running your own practice?
So it's 8 years, but my youngest was at home with me for the first couple of years. So I feel like it was more of a hobby business at that point, more than anything else. Also, it's, as I say, mentor mediators. It's a known nightmare for workplace mediators to get observations, which you tend to do after you've done your training before you lead a mediation. It can be a real nightmare to do that. And then to start getting mediations in before you raise your profile and people know to refer to you and that kind of thing. So it was a slowly built up business. I'd say the last 5 or 6 years is when it's really felt like a business.
And do you find that you have built that work-life blend, not balance, to success?
What you need it to be,
Does it work for you?
I think so. I mean, I think the summer holidays are like the real test of whether you've got that blend right or not. I think so for some years, especially because I really enjoy what I'm doing. Yeah. So if I have a moment where I'm doing something, I can really go down the rabbit hole. Then in a summer holiday where I thought, well, I'll just work for them, for a couple of hours a day, but I hadn't set like time limits or anything like that. I hadn't really people can book appointments with me and stuff like that, and I hadn't selected a time slot for them to book. So there are times when I've got to the end of the summer holiday and done a little self-evaluation and gone, well, that did not work.
Can I just say, if you are a business owner who, when it comes to the summer holidays, you are truly able to tools down, then we applaud you. For the rest of us, it is like holding on to a speeding train that is on fire, but also needs constant fueling. And you get to the end of it and you go, I nearly dropped the F-bomb then, and you go, oh my goodness. And you never want your kids to go back to school, because that's one of the reasons people like us do these things. But you go, oh my goodness, I need that break. And then you're squeezing in holidays, and then you're like, it is unbelievable.
Yeah, it is. So last summer, I feel like, I got to the end and I was like, ooh, A star, because I got to the end and, sometimes we get to the end of the summer holidays and my girls were fine. Like they'd had a blast. Whereas for me, I was like, I have not had a break. And I feel like I was like 70% on everything that I was doing. So what worked for me in the summer was I blocked out up until, so after 11 in the morning, then my diary couldn't be booked into. So it meant that, and you know, young children, well, they're slightly older now, but you know, for them, they're like, great, we get to wake up really slowly, do our own thing, have breakfast at 10, you know, that kind of thing. So they don't need me at that point. And then I feel less kind of, you know, mummy guilt about doing that. And then if I've got a mediation, then that's, you know, slightly exceptional, and I'll be out for the day or wherever I need to travel to. But generally my working day of stopping at 11, that seems to have worked so far. But I think you always have to keep changing it as your children change and all of that kind of thing as well.
No, you do.
I love that guilt-free screen time. Okay, guys.
Enjoy your iPads. Don't ever preach to us about screen time. We've got to Easter 2024 just happened for us, was particularly challenging because Easter moves, as most people realise, and it moved to a period where we had quite a lot of work that we couldn't change, like digital Circus sessions and things like that. Not only did we have sessions we couldn't change, we had my brother and nephew over from Australia visiting for 3 weeks, and plus just everything else that goes on. And it was, and I genuinely thought we would be approaching school holidays as business owners going, brilliant, we can hang out with the kids, lazy mornings. And it's like, no, not even vague. But so I like the idea of working for a bit of morning and then kind of family time from whatever time you choose. My only challenge in amongst that is I also like to go running in the morning. So then I find myself,
run.
Well, I accept don't run, but you know how much I'm enjoying it. And so then I end up getting up even earlier to then get the run in, to get some work in. Then it's like jump in the car in Easter to drive, like, it is a speeding train on fire that needs fueling and everything else. Right, anyway, but it's amazing. Wouldn't change it for the world.
Do you wake up every day and loving what you do?
Most days. I think some days, if I have not kind of made sure that I'm not taking on too much mental responsibility for what's happened, you know, I always have a little bit of like nervousness when I do a follow-up call after a mediation. You never know what's happened since. You know, I did one mediation several years ago, and they literally did a restructure the week after we'd done a mediation. And so it meant that everything that we'd put in place was just up in the air. And, you know, so there are things like that you can't plan for. And I always want to do a good job. And so part of that is ego based, but part of it is just, I want to, you know, for them, I want them to have a better life. And when you've got a difficult situation going on with someone you work with, then that makes it really difficult. So, so there are times like that when I'm like, oh, I hope it's okay. Often it's fine. Like most of the time it's fine. I'm pretty good at my job. I can say that having done it. But, you know, there's still always that part of me that goes, oh, what's happened since I spoke to them last that makes me a little bit, you know, a bit nervous about it.
Well, you're only human.
You can't control. So.
Yeah, exactly. You're only human. You can't help those feelings, but you can't control everything. Absolutely. Yeah. Okay, Emma. I mean, I could chat to you for you, and you're the most calming influence. Sometimes this one I've really enjoyed, just the calming nature of Emma. Maybe Emma, everyone to a little Emma on their shoulders every day.
Yeah, but I found it funny because you are that kind of. When we met you for an in-person coffee morning a month or so back, but it was really interesting because like you'd say something and Emma would go, yeah, but why is that, Alan? Or, why that? And I'm like, oh, because I quite like, obviously I'm happy talking about myself as well. And people like us, oh, I like being made to think a bit differently.
Curiosity is a brilliant trait to have.
Unless you're a cat.
That's one of my key tips. If you want to like have a more intense, you know, better relationship, is ask another question. I think particularly in Britain, we've got lots of these like off the cuff questions that we don't really care about the answer to. So no one expects you to care about the answer. But if you ask a follow-up question, then people kind of go, oh, they do care.
Brilliant.
I love it. So it did make me think about expect the unexpected. There was a very funny video I saw on TikTok from a creator called Sam Cornforth about expect the unexpected. You go and find it, everyone. It's worth finding. Anyway, Emily, go on.
Final question that we ask every single week without fail. Mm-hmm. Emma, if you could go back to your younger self and you can choose any point in time, what would you say to yourself?
What What would I say to myself? That life won't be what you expected, but it will still be really good.
Oh, we've not had that one before.
No,
That's a
we've not.
great answer.
So true, isn't it?
Yeah.
Good. Emma, thank you very much for being here
Yeah,
today.
thanks so much.
You're just absolutely lovely. You really are. And I just love your decor.
And I love how your top is going in perfectly. And I've got your LinkedIn page up here on a second screen. And it's the reverse of the colours we're looking at.
Oh, look at that. I mean, I do like these colours. I do like it. In fact, this was the first room where my husband was like, you go for it. So
see, you still got your interior design little thing in there. You don't need it as a job. You can just do it. Everyone listening, go and check out Emma everywhere. We're going to put all her details in the bio and everything underneath. Thank you very much, Emma. And we'll see you all next time on the Digital Circus Life.
Bye.